Okay, was this discovery in '89 oversold initially? Is that what some of the problem may
Possibly,
have been?
yes.
Now, these two professors, as I understand it, have been kind of outcast in the scientific community?
Well, oh, absolutely. Nature magazine and Science magazine, which are the two official organs of science press, and they influence general news media such as the New York Times and so forth. These magazines refuse to put anything positive about cold fusion in. In fact, cold fusion scientists don't even waste their time any longer. They publish elsewhere, in Physics Letters A, in the Proceedings of the Academy of Sciences of Japan, Fusion Technology, which is a publication of the American Nuclear Society that deals, ironically, with both hot fusion and cold fusion. That's where you'll find cold fusion papers, and in our magazine, Infinite Energy. They don't even waste their time with nature or science. So yes, they're totally outcast from that bailiwick. The American Physical Society, as an example, went on the warpath against cold fusion prematurely for no good reason, just what I would call bigotry. Now, of course, there will be, when cold fusion is commercialized, and that's where
what
we're
you're
at now.
working on.
We're not only our group, but hundreds and hundreds of scientists around the world are working on commercial products. And there are commercial products now, mainly in small U.S. private corporations. Certain larger ones like Motorola are very interested in this and are following it. This is serious business. It doesn't matter, and this is historically the case, it doesn't matter what the establishment believes. Whatever nature is really telling us, that's truth.
Take you back to when you were working at MIT.
Yes.
What happened to you at MIT? From my readings, it almost sounded something like a movie. You know, you
It is.
kind of came in at the last
Right.
minute and crashed the meeting.
Well, it wasn't the last minute. Well, I'll tell you the basic story of what happened at MIT. It's rather astonishing. I was very friendly with all the hot fusion boys over there. In fact, I was always a fan of hot fusion. I'm an engineer. I thought hot fusion is a great idea. The idea that we could get infinite energy out of the ocean waters using the heavy water in the ocean. And well, as the cold fusion story broke, and I was the chief science writer at the MIT News office, it was my job to handle both the cold fusion claims, the proponents. There were some proponents at MIT and still are, Professor Hagelstein, for example, and the hot fusion people who were making fun of it. Now, I didn't know what was right. I was an engineer and scientist enough to follow the evidence, and I saw the evidence going upward. It was getting better and better and better and better, and it became eventually overwhelming 2 years after the announcement. It was overwhelming. That's what I said in Fire from Ice. But I saw the hot fusion people doing all sorts of dirty tricks, unbelievable dirty tricks, behind closed doors. For example, planting press stories in the newspaper in the earliest of days, late April 1989, hardly a month after Pons and Fleischmann announced. They were already calling Pons and Fleischmann frauds. They did call them frauds in the newspaper. And they then said that they didn't call them frauds because they were afraid of being sued and so forth and so on. Then they planted stories of the fact that the whole thing was a joke and it should be just erased.
Now, you were a science writer in
I was
the
a
public
science writer
relations department.
In the news office of MIT,
Okay.
which is the central news distribution for the popular press and for the MIT community in Tech Talk, the newspaper, the 20,000 circulation school newspaper. I was very happy and proud to be there at my alma mater. But when I saw what they were doing, I could not believe it. Not everything came out in my book. I made the book Fire from Ice does indeed tell the story of the first 2 years of cold fusion. But I only learned of some even nastier tricks later on. You know, the MIT people claim that there was no evidence for cold fusion. They did it on the basis of nuclear evidence. They said, well, we don't see neutrons of the appropriate magnitude, which was setting a straw man up to begin with. It says, it doesn't work like hot fusion, therefore it can't be real. You should be dead. Pons and Fleischmann, all other cold fusion people working on this, you should be dead. Since you're not dead and killed by the radiation corresponding to the heat that you claim to be generating, you are frauds. You are incompetent. That was the basic storyline launched at MIT. And MIT was the leader, the MIT hot fusion people, with their Princeton, New Jersey allies, were the key culprits.
You're not going to get me in trouble, are you?
No, of course not. The worst culprit was the U.S. Department of Energy, which hired a man, Dr. John Huizenga, who in his book, and anyone can look at his book if they want to, Cold Fusion, The Scientific Fiasco of the Century, in which he proudly admits, I knew it was nonsense in the beginning, and I told them, don't even have a panel. Don't have a panel. It's completely preposterous. Let's get rid of it. Don't even think of it. But they hired him anyway. Professor Happer, now at Princeton, also on that panel, said just by looking at Pons and Fleischmann on television, you could tell they were incompetent boobs. That's the attitude with which he went into there. So if you have a panel like the O.J. Simpson trial or this recent trial in Cambridge, Massachusetts involving a young lady, and you have jurors that are so outrageously biased, what do you think you're going to get? You're going to get that answer.
Okay.
The negative answer.
All right. Let's look at the implications of both hot and cold fusion.
Absolutely.
The way I understand it, the public wins.
They would win either way.
In either case.
If either worked, they would win.
Unlimited energy using water as fuel.
Absolutely.
No pollution, extremely cheap. Is that the bottom line?
That's the bottom line for cold fusion. For hot fusion, it is true that in principle it can be done. They haven't done it. In other words, they've never gotten more energy out than in. And moreover, it will always be, according to all projections, even by the most optimistic hot fusion people, it will always be a very large machine. You're not going to put a hot fusion reactor in your basement.
Okay.
And you're going to have power lines going all over. And Professor Litsky at MIT, who left hot fusion years ago in disgust, said, yes, you can eventually make it work, but no one is going to buy it. And the proof of that is that there is no private money in hot fusion. Zero.
The proponents of hot fusion, you could safely say, would be threatened if
Absolutely.
cold fusion, because nuclear physicists would be replaced by chemists.
In effect, yes. You see, the hot fusion program gets hundreds of millions of dollars a year. They used to get about 350 million magnetic fusion, or mag fusion as they call it. And now they're down to about 240 million. So they're getting angrier and angrier and leaner and meaner. And they basically they didn't like in 1989 the very threat that even if congressmen believed it might be true, they might divert $25 million from their monolithic program and just check out cold fusion. They didn't want that.
So
they'd be out of business if when the world realizes that there are commercial products based on this coming out in the next few years. That will be the end of the hot fusion program.
It would be safe to say then that conventional energy conglomerates would be threatened if either cold or hot fusion. But let's talk about research money, because it's, in your view, a lot of money would be needed to research cold fusion. And why don't you think this money is being given to universities to research cold fusion?
Well, because the government panel, within 3 months, came up with this preposterous rush to judgment, which, of course, because Huizenga and Happer and company believed it was nonsense to begin with, they came out with the expected answer. And they haven't even stepped back since then to look at the data, all right? That's why the government is not giving any money for this. Although bootlegged research has occurred, and by the way, federal research by Drs. Clater and Storms and Dr. Melvin Miles at the Navy Research Lab in China have confirmed this phenomena beyond any question, and it's published in federal reports. Bootlegged or research money set aside by the director on the sly of Los Alamos, which has confirmed this in spades, just as it has been confirmed in spades
So now
in
you're
Japan.
just saying on my show
Right.
that the government is on the sly giving money
Yeah,
to...
oh no, not in a coherent way. Not in a coherent way. In other words, the monolithic Department of Energy gives out no central money for cold fusion.
Okay.
But occasionally what happens, bootlegging occurs, bootlegging occurs,
Okay.
or the director allows it to happen.
Okay, I can see I'm going to get in trouble here.
That's not trouble.
Okay. Tell us about this.
Well, this is just an example of a cold fusion cell. Actually, this one, Evan Ragland of Diamond Head, Mississippi, he happens to be the inventor of the daisy wheel printer. He came up with this idea. It's a slight variant of the Pons-Fleischmann cell. It has a piece of palladium in it, and it has the same kind of platinum anodes material, but it has two, and they flip back and forth with the voltage between two sides of this palladium plate. Of course, what you do is you have heavy water in there, you have electricity going in, and it's still DC current. Most engineers know what that means, just direct current, but it flips back and forth between two cathodes, two anodes. And what you finally find from this is more heat out than in.